For NYUp, this is Matt Parrino, joined as always by Ryan Talbot. And we are taking a look at all the top prospects in the 2019 draft and who we think could be potential targets for the Bills at number 9. And next up is Oklahoma wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown. I'm a big fan of Marquise Brown. I like the swagger that he brings to the table. And there's three S's when you're thinking of Marquise Brown as wide receiver: separation, suddenness, and speed. And this guy brings, an electric, dynamic skill set to an offense. 75 catches, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns in 2018. He's getting comparisons to a DeSean Jackson, maybe even a poor man's Antonio Brown at the next level. I mean, I've been very impressed with him. What are your takeaways, Ryan?
Yeah, I think he'll be the first wide receiver taken off the board on Thursday night. I think he fits Buffalo's offense in terms of Josh Allen's skill set. His greatest asset is his speed, that separation, that deep ball passing. But there's also some questions there. He's a little undersized at 5'9". There's some questionable ball skills where it comes to tracking. So he might get that separation. He might be able to get downfield, but he needs to improve in terms of tracking the ball. And then can he become an average blocker in the NFL at his size? Because he is very small for the position. And, every wide receiver is a different case, but you look at the frame, you look at the size, and you think in the NFL, there could be some injury concerns there, especially when they're taking some of those hits from some of the safeties around the league.
Mm-hmm. And, you look at the Buffalo Bills, how they're currently constructed, and it's interesting. You have John Brown that's just been brought into the fold. He brings a lot of those same type of skills. I think Marquise Brown's ceiling may be a little bit higher, but with Robert Foster also on the roster, and you're looking at that number 9 pick, and even in a scenario where they trade down, and I'm not necessarily sure that you're getting the value there when you look across your entire roster, bringing in another guy that brings a similar skill set to the equation. And also, it's worth noting, I mean, this Liz Frank injury that he's dealing with, the foot injury, that's never a good thing to see when a football player is dealing with a foot injury. You look at A.J. Green in Cincinnati, it's been nagging for him over the course of his career, dealing with several different foot issues. And I feel like those things never quite go away. I mean, Sammy Watkins, a guy that, the Bills traded up for to get number 4, he's also dealt with foot issues over the course of his career. And when that happens, it seems to be something that sticks around for these guys.
Yeah, Watkins was the example I was just about to use. He has all the talent in the world when he's on the field, when he's healthy. You see that. You see the playmaking ability. But those Liz Frank injuries are serious, and foot injuries for a wide receiver are serious because obviously planting and using their feet is a huge part of their game at the wide receiver position. So there are some concerns there. Definitely not a guy considered to be in play at number 9. Someone that, like you mentioned, is a trade-down possibility. But Buffalo does have some speed already on their roster with Foster, with John Brown. So unless Buffalo is really thinking, all right, we're gonna have a lot of empty backfield this year, and we're gonna run 5 wide receiver sets, and we're gonna have 3 guys that can really hurt you down the field and stretch the field in Foster, Brown, and Brown. And then have some guys underneath like Zay Jones and Cole Beasley. Well, it sounds nice on paper, but is that really the offense they're going to run? Sean McDermott has shown, early in his coaching career that he wants to be a balanced offense. He wants to get that run game involved. So I'm not quite sure that Brown is the best fit for Buffalo, but I do think he is an exceptionally talented player. And like I said, I think he'll be the first wide receiver off the board come Thursday night.
Yeah, and you wonder where that's going to be, right? Most mock drafts, for the most part of this entire process, have had DK Metcalf and Marquise Brown at some place in the first round. But the closer we get and the deeper that you dive on these guys, it wouldn't surprise me if a receiver didn't come off the board until the second round. And then you're talking about a completely different scenario for the Bills because there's so much depth at that position this year. You're looking at maybe a Deebo Samuel, a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, guys that could potentially be there in the late second, third, maybe even fourth round if these receivers don't start going until the second round. That I think that it just makes more sense with the additions they made through free agency, the Bills, to wait on the receiver.
Yeah, without a doubt. This year's draft class is going to have a lot of players, like you said, available in round two just because of how strong the defensive side of the ball is in this first round. I think you're going to see a lot of defensive talent go off the board, especially on the defensive line. I think you're going to see some safeties possibly sneak it late into the first round, some cornerbacks too. But then on the offensive side of the ball, offensive tackles, there will be a run there. There's always a run there. And there's going to be a few quarterbacks that come off the board, whether it's two, whether it's three. There have even been some draft analysts that said you could see four come off the board, which I'll believe when I see it. But there's always those runs on certain positions, and I think this is, again, going to be one of those years where wide receivers, you don't see a lot of them come off the board in round one. Running backs, you don't see a lot of them come off the board in round one, maybe one at most. So it's going to be interesting to see what's there in round two, and if Buffalo says, okay, there's all this talent right now in round two, maybe you push it down to round three, and you address another pressing issue based on your draft board and who you have as the best player available. So, do I think the Bills will walk away with a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds? I think it's definitely possible. But I also think there's going to be some better talent at other positions, especially in those early rounds, especially with their first pick at number 9. So I would be very surprised if Brown ended up being on Buffalo's roster. But you could see why teams love him, why they think that he is the first or the best wide receiver in this draft class.
Guys, keep it locked on NY Up, Syracuse.com for all your Buffalo Bills content, and as we move toward Thursday night's NFL Draft.